Tonight, I just was honestly thinking that I was going to begin a Sean's Thoughts video when I suddenly realized this was more of a possibilities episode. See, because the difference between possibilities and Sean's thoughts is Sean's thoughts are just my thoughts. And of course, possibilities do factor into what I do think about when they are my thoughts. But yet, in this particular one that I was essentially pondering as I walked home from buying a bag of chips was that what if it is all real? What if every conspiracy theory, not everyone, but what if a large amount of them that were once thought to be conspiracy theories, what if those were in fact actually real, genuine, and authentic? That they were actually, several of them anyways, a part of our reality. And I guess more so where I go with this when I say, well, what if it is all real? I mean, everything that I've come to understand about the nature of our reality, what if there's a lot more real in that than, well, what I grew up thinking was real? No, it's an intriguing thought to think of. Hello, my name is Sean, and you're here with me today beside the Fraser River. I'm back here again. I really love hope. I think that before we get into me talking about, well, hope, I mean, not hope, I mean, the topic of conversation today, I kind of just want to take a moment to appreciate this place called Hope, BC. I know I've made quite a few videos from here, and I find there to be something amazing about this town. Not because of the movie First Blood, that Rambo movie with Sylvester Stallone in it, but rather, I don't know, just a vintage and essentially a kept example of community. Like, I like how all the stores close early, well, majority of them anyways, and there's a really nice atmosphere here, especially being alongside the Fraser River and in between or hidden amongst several different mountain peaks, which are pretty nice. Like, there's snow-capped mountain peaks even right now, or partially anyways, as well as evergreen peaks of varying heights. It's a very beautiful place, and I really enjoy spending time here, especially in this particular camp space, because it's right alongside the Fraser River, and you're able to see that gentle glitter of water just stroll on by. It's like a whole bunch of thoughts, and they're just going forward, and they're not trying to hold on to anything. Right now, actually, the river is overflowing, means it's higher up. I guess there's a lot of runoff supposedly, but or maybe there's just a lot more water being added to the water table. Nonetheless, the river's pretty high. It actually has been high along several different riversides that I've recently been at. Yeah, it's quite amazing. Anyway, so thank you for sharing your time and attention with me. Today, we are going to talk, what if it's all real? I mean, I don't mean all conspiracies. I mean, those stories, those ideas and concepts that have to do with conspiracy that I have studied, that I have looked into. What if there's a lot that are real? Where does that leave our world? I mean, you see a lot of things right now, for example, talking about, well, aliens on mainstream news. And what if that is the case, meaning that there are beings that are non-human that have been here for an awful long time? How does that change our reality? How does that change one person's reality or overall everyone's reality? You can look at movies like The Coneheads and maybe see how, challenges arise when societies come together and such. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I jumped into The Coneheads. I don't even really remember that movie. Nonetheless, it does, you know, just demonstrate humans recognizing that there is life outside of theirs. Like, would that make us more compassionate, more understanding of other differences, or would that just simply lead to another division? And I would say being aware that there is life that is beyond our life, I feel that perhaps would, stimulate us to be more allowing of a lot of things. But yeah, what if, you know, what we have been hearing about this so-called, elite that rule the world behind cloak and dagger and shadows and such? What if that is real as well? What if there is an underlying system that was created in order to control us? Well, if that's the case and we decide that's not what we want any longer, what does our world look like? How free are we? And do we actually get to be free, or do our habits essentially limit us from being free? And I mean things such as daily routines and going to certain spots or certain franchises and having certain cups of coffees and having access to, food being cooked for you. You don't know when it was cooked, but nonetheless being cooked for you all hours of the day. What does our world look like if we no longer have those conveniences because people no longer want to work late into the night? That's what I said I kind of like about this town is that when it comes to 5 or 6, most of the shops are closed. Yes, there's the major franchises, they stay open later, but even later here is still 9 o'clock, and then everything is closed with the exception possibly of the cannabis and bars and such. And, that's a really nice effect to have on a community of any size, I think. And maybe that possibly would make us more, communal with each other at home. If there was things that were less open, that we were all home at a certain time. Not to say that it has to be the case, but this is once again, possibilities. So what happens if these systems, these corporations, these organizations, what happens if they do go away? Sometimes I wonder, a lot of people say they want the fall of, these elites, but yet they still do provide a lot of things that the common person, wants, such as fast food and coffees and, you know, all this food product that's manufactured. And what if it is true and all that does stop? Where do we, well, I guess we cook our own food. Actually, grow our own food. Of course, we cook it, but I guess we start growing a lot more of it. I really like the idea of having fruit trees all over the cityscape, allowing fruit just to grow and fall off a tree, and then any passerby is able to, have an apple, have a pear, have a whatever it is. I really like that idea of allowing food to grow and grow it everywhere. Perhaps rather than having farms where you were growing stuff super far, that those foods that we do eat, that they're grown nearby us and that we love and tenderly care for them, perhaps that will actually enhance perhaps the value, the nutritional value, like what you procure, minerals and such from that food, rather than farming it and just leaving them sitting there. Yeah, I often wonder if things like this do happen, if there was all of this effect on our food, for example, getting us to eat more of the wrong stuff. What happens when we actually decide that we no longer eat that stuff? Will we eat a lot less? And I often wonder, how much do we actually require to eat? See, a lot of people always talk about, the idea of famine, but famine's based on having enough to eat. So what if that enough to eat is actually considerably less when we stop ingesting those things that maybe have altered our eating habits and our eating patterns and our desire to even eat? Like, do we really have the same desire to eat if we are eating the proper nutritional stuff and we're no longer taking things that are depleting our energy? Like, for instance, McDonald's, I always understood as that, well, you are able to consume mass of food, that the actual amount of energy that your body requires to break down that food exceeds the amount of, well, I don't think calories is the right word, but the energy content that that food has. So it takes more energy to break it down than it does to actually create by breaking it down, if that makes any sense. And so that's why that eating it is, fills you up, but you don't necessarily have the energy to go about the rest of the day. And then you rely on coffee, and then coffee props you up and stimulates you. But then you have, of course, the effects of that. So, anyways, the point, I guess, being, what if a lot of the stuff, as I said, is true? How does that change the way that we are going to live our daily lives? And how does that change, well, your daily life, my daily life? See, I think one of the big things that does change is our requirement to be sovereign, meaning that we have to do a lot more to look after ourselves. And I wonder, how many people are really, really ready to do more for themselves and less for, well, we'll call him the tax man. I mean, do less for whoever it is that's leeching our income. So can we do more for ourselves and less for, those people that are just living off of us, that are essentially parasites, or not people per se, but, those systems and such that are parasitical, that they require us, and without us, they don't exist. What if that is the case, that a lot of these systems that we were affected by, what if we no longer gave them our energy? Will they still continue to exist? So, for instance, that big store with a W on it, in the name, anyways, if that store ceases to exist and you replace all of those jobs that were lost in communities of, self sustaining mom and pop businesses, if those come back, what do most people do when it comes to getting their soap, getting their essential needs? I never understood, well, for a very long time, about buying food at Walmart until it actually just manifested itself in the middle of my city, and then everything else was gone almost. And so, yeah, but what if it's not there? Where do we get all that stuff? Well, one of the ideas that was put forth by the Global Intelligence Agency, which I found was amazing, was to create a marketplace. And this marketplace would be online, and it would have the ability to help entrepreneurs and soap makers and, any other type of pastry makers, or like just anyone overall, could essentially put their services up to have them, purchased by anyone around the world. And not services, I mean, but they're goods. So if you were to go at home and make candles, or make soap, or make Epsom salts, or your own essential oils, or, you know, whatever it is, you would be able to put that up there and make it available for sale. And therefore, you would be instantly accessible to a worldwide market. And so I thought that that was a phenomenal idea, and it would definitely help people truly be sovereign. So, the interesting thing I think about when I just ask myself, well, why did I just talk about that? Was that oftentimes when we get into a certain state of fear of what's we're seeing out there, and playing that what if game, what if that bad thing happens, and how is that going to, and then going off in a tailspin like that. And yet, when I approach the what if, I'm imagining, from the best point of view. What if we didn't have debt anymore? I'm going to do a talk on, overall debt and stuff later, perhaps, maybe. I don't know. It's been a long time since I tried or even put up that thumbnail for that talk. But nonetheless, what if we didn't have debt? What if we were all debt free? What if, there was some sort of effect on the financial market that collapsed a bank's ability to call in the debt because the debt was so enormous planet-wide. What if that was true? There's perhaps a lot of truth in, the financial state of the world right now. When you look at the amount of houses that are up for sale and the amount of, or the decline, you could say, of business, you know, the challenge with a lot of this stuff that we see out there is that it is presented to us on digital platforms that know what we want to see. And that's the challenge for any conspiracy analyst, is recognizing that facts are sometimes placed in front of you because that's what you want to see. And whether it's, we ourselves creating that, or it's the AI that's presenting it, or the algorithm that's presenting it, knowing that the odds that you will share your attention on it are much higher. Well, what if, yeah, about the AI. Actually, I have a really great video as part of this series. It's called What If God Created AI? So if you want to go check that out, I'll put that at the end of this one. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that are essentially coming into my purview, or not purview, I don't know where that word came from, but have come into my field. A lot of different possibilities of things that we are going through, like there being a monumentally triggering event that'll essentially catapult humanity upwards towards more of a spiritual type of reality, you could say. So what if there is some sort of event that is essentially taking place? Some people think it's a solar flash, and other people think that, they have other words for it. Nonetheless, it's the idea that we move into a higher level of consciousness, and that we essentially learn how to restore our alignment with nature. And not to say that we were responsible for all these, you know, situations, but yet we still did play a part. For instance, with plastic, people can say anything they want about plastic, and that, they or we use it. And a lot of us even lose it. They throw it into the forest, they throw it into the water, they do a lot of things, but yet altogether, it was only given to us. Like, I mean, it was presented to us as a solution to carrying the groceries, or making something more works better, or something like that, adding plastics to stuff, or making it that we essentially had to use it. So, but I don't even know where I'm going with that. I don't know why I started talking about plastic. Actually, the moment that I started thinking about the word plastic, I remember this little, what do you call it? At Science, not Science World, the aquarium, this little demonstration that really tried to focus on putting the shame upon all of us for how much plastic is in the actual water itself. And yet I always look back and think, well, no, it's the companies who made the plastic that brought that petroleum-based stuff out of the ground, and then essentially created a whole market for it, and then marketed it to us. And a lot of times there wasn't too much of an alternative. It was that, or, paper bags that get wet in the rain. So we all chose plastic. And all of the stuff that we buy at the store, most of it comes in plastic. Like, there isn't necessarily another option that's as convenient. So back to what I was saying, and maybe time to conclude this all up, is that what if all these things are truly happening, and that we are essentially moving into a point, and that's why there is a lot of chaos out there, because as I was mentioning before, there's a lot of energy being added to our system. And when I mean our system, I mean the overall planet of the Earth. And then that's creating a lot of changes. However you wish to see those changes, there seem to be happening. But what if we are moving towards this big event? Will we rise for the occasion, I wonder? I hope. I hope that a lot more people perhaps just become aware that even if several of the conspiracies or the concepts or ideas that I'm aware of aren't real, there's still a significantly amount of things that are coming to the light about the true nature of our reality. And if they are all real, at least the ones that I ascribe to or understand or ponder often, even if they are all real, I think the possibility is that we would then have less that we were tethered to, because we could let a lot of things go, recognizing that a lot of things are fake. But yet, I guess you still have to go through the awakening, like the aha moment without going, ah, without like freaking out. So, yeah, if they are true, I guarantee that we will have the, I don't know, the foresight, the strength, the courage to make it through, even though it might be challenging for some. I think that there's a lot of people that, they're already ready, although they may not know it yet. Meaning that I once talked about that perhaps in the past lives, past whatever, that there had been done some training perhaps or had already had that experience. And it's just a matter of, re-triggering it. And then suddenly, there's maybe a lot more people that are ready to vastly alter this world. And I would love to see a lot more of this world. And I think that that would truly come with just, sitting here almost in this dusk, just talking away and, maybe, just maybe, I guess, the things that I say, sharing the thoughts and stories and ideas and ponderments and all that lovely stuff, maybe that will all help create and spark discussion that we can, all jump on the path that's going towards restoration of this beautiful planet we call home. So, anyways, I'm going to leave it right there. I hope you enjoyed me just talking. I don't know. Like I said, I thought I was doing a completely different talk, and then I sat down and it suddenly became this. So, have a wonderful evening, and I will share much more later.